Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path. Welcome to the conclusion of the Yarrabulla Creek track. So where we finished video 2, we were stuck on a hill on the Yarrabulla Creek track, and that's exactly where we're picking up from. It was wet, slippery and soft, and even on sections like this where it wasn't that steep, it was ridiculous. We're still winching because we had no traction and no forward momentum. So look, I didn't put all the winching in here. There was about 4 or 5 successive winches because we're pretty limited in our selection of trees that we could winch from. There's really not a lot of trees, despite how it appears. There's a lot of bushes, but there's not a lot of actual trees that are substantial enough to take the weight of a vehicle on a winch. So it does get a little bit tricky, and consequently the winch is pulling me off the track there, and you can see I'm trying to steer back onto the track, but it's a catch-22, needing to leave the tension on the cable, otherwise I slide backwards. You can see there from the wheel placement, the vehicle's almost horizontal, and it's hard to believe that I still can't actually just drive from there, but I can't. It was, you know, literally, you can see there, the wheels are spinning every time I try and put my foot on the accelerator. We've just got no traction at all. So winched over to the side there, and the reason for that was we actually had some other guys on the track that had been hunting in the area. They were coming back down, so we needed to move over to give them space to get past me, as I was kind of blocking the track. Really helpful guys, like most people you run into in the high country. Was happy to do what he could to help us out, but in the end, yeah, we were just able to clear the way a little bit there for him, and he was able to go past. We did want to get right over sort of as far as we can, because the track, again, it's not probably clear there, but it's a little bit off camber, and you know, he was worried and I was worried that he might actually, in coming down, slide into me. You can see there, as I've taken the brake off the patch and the tension's come back on, you can see, you know, how much of a jerk that was on the winch line. Not a huge tree we're winching off there, and it's pretty much the last tree that we could actually get to as well. There's a couple more little ones further up, but not substantial enough to winch off. So it was around about this time that we were thinking this could be the end of our Yarrabulla Creek trip yet again. So yeah, Max Tracks to the rescue, one under each tyre, just enough to get a bit of momentum going forward to actually get up and out. And sure enough, we elected to turn around and admit defeat there, because after this hill there's another hill. It's bigger and even more rutted and softer than this one. We'll be back when it's a bit drier, and we'll take on Yarrabulla Creek again. So yeah, the guy you saw coming down in his 80, he'd gone and had a crack at that, and I think admitted defeat. So worked our way back down to where the other guys had already turned around, and we decided to call it a day for today on this track. Cracking views, and by this time certainly looking forward to getting a late lunch. Most of the guys had already had lunch by the time we pulled up. And yeah, soon after lunch we're getting going, and we did come across another group that had followed us in sometime later after us, a couple of 80 series and a pretty well kitted out Ranger. Now they already had one of their mates, as you saw there briefly, under tow, and that was on the bottom section hill, which we'd all driven okay. So we sort of warned them about what was coming, and they were optimistically going to have a crack. Look, if you know one of the guys there, look, I didn't want to put their number plates and, you know, details of their vehicles in the video, obviously, because we don't know them and didn't have their permission to do that, but on the off chance that one of you guys that was in one of those vehicles sees this video, I'd love to hear how you went, whether you made it up that hill and whether you made it up the next hill. I think with a lot of winching and persistence, you probably could have got there, but it would have taken a long while. So we're heading back out, obviously, back through all the river crossings. Much shorter video than the ways in. I'm not going to refilm every single river crossing externally shot, but just show the highlights, because one of the things that I noticed on the way out, and I don't know if you can see it here at this little crossing necessarily, but with the traffic, you know, there's been a couple of hunters' vehicles, there'd been our 5 vehicles or so, and then another 5 or 6 vehicles in that other convoy. It's amazing how much water had gotten carted up onto the track. It hadn't rained all day, but the track was substantially wetter than when we drove through earlier in the day. And that's just from the vehicles picking up water, and these weren't deep river crossings, as you know. That's just from the vehicles picking up water on their suspension, tyres, undercarriage, and dropping it on the track. So we're back here at that very, very steep one that most of us had to winch up, except for Sam in his MUX. This was a lot easier than it might have been to drive to get back out, because the guys you saw coming the other way before they got to this, not all of them had winches, so they actually rock packed this quite a lot. Spent a lot of time, so that made the drive back down a lot easier for us, and probably subsequently the drive in easier for the next group that come down this track. So again, might look a little bit different because it's had a lot more traffic across it than when we came up it. But this is the one that we all had to winch up. There you go. Big step down. And it managed to clear that without even hitting the rear bar, which is pretty amazing. So, you know, we often talk about tracks changing, so that's the same bit there, just from the GoPro on board. You saw at the start of this little section there all the rocks that they'd packed in down the bottom. Quite a neat job, and certainly made our exit from the track a heck of a lot easier than it might otherwise have been. Yeah, we often talk about how tracks change seasonally, year on year, that sort of thing. This is a surprising example of just how much the track changed on the same day. And look, the interesting thing is too, I'm sure you guys have found this before, when you drive a crossing in the opposite direction, it's like a completely different crossing than the first time you drove it, because suddenly the bit you drove down that wasn't terribly difficult becomes the challenge, and the exit becomes the easier entrance portion. At least that's what I find. So this was an interesting little one. The approach there, which is now the exit, reasonably steep, rocky, kind of slippery. Again, it was a lot wetter than it had been, and off camber as well. Just nice and steady, and let the tyres and the vehicle do the work and pull you up. But again, this one's another good example. I mean, admittedly, when I came through previously, I was at the lead of the convoy, and we're now towards the back. But you can see how much wetter this is, and how much more rock's been exposed there down the bottom. It's almost like a different crossing and track. And even these portions of the track, at least to me in my recollection, felt a lot wetter. You know, like the water that was on the track had been spread out more from the passage of the vehicles than when we drove through earlier in the day. This track's always been one of my favourites, just for the variety that it offers. River crossings, mud. There's some sections of mud on this track pretty much year round, And then rocky hill climbs, great views. Just waiting for Mark there in his Colorado to get settled into this next crossing. Probably one of the longer crossings on this track. Had a reasonably steep little exit, a little bit scrubbed out on this side where we're entering now, and what was the entrance last time is now the exit, and substantially easier. Slow and steady there, that's the wet brakes sort of making a bit of noise. Apologies for that glare from the sun. Hard to help when you're heading west. And back to the last couple of crossings. Again, this whole track here is quite a bit wetter than it seemed, and again this section as well. I didn't recall this being quite so wet. I think one of the very first times I drove this track, one of the muddy sections, there's a Hilux stuck and he did not want to be recovered by a Pajero. He was definitely just waiting for a mate. So again, drop this back in. You might remember us coming down here. This is quite a long climb when you're coming back this way. It's rocky, it's loose, not super difficult or anything, but just a really long, steady, rocky climb. You want to keep good throttle control. Times like this I really think about installing one of those iDrive or whatever throttle controllers. A lot of people seem to quite enjoy them and find them really good in situations like this. It's always a bit interesting trying to keep your throttle control nice and steady when the vehicle's bouncing over rocks. Maybe I'm the only one that has that challenge. And here we are, just about back to the section I think where we ended the first video. Yeah, so Mark's tried to take the same line he took last time. You can see him giving the Colorado a good shake there, and unfortunately he's bottomed out. He's probably the lowest vehicle out of the group, even though Matt's Prado isn't lifted. It does have airbag suspension in the rear, so it can lift the rear up a little bit, and I think naturally it just has a bit more clearance than the Colorado. So he was bottomed out here. We just hooked on the back. I'm not sure what happened there with the filming, but we just hooked on the back and gave him a short pull, and yeah, pulled him backwards.
We get a recovery on Lucky.
Top job here by Lockie, not actually falling in. I'm sure if that was me carrying that snatch strap, it's a nice white one too, along there. It's a little bit hard to choose your line when you're on foot.
Go on, fall in. Oh no. Jump, jump.
Slow and steady wins the race.
I did. Hold on to one end. That's kinetic energy taker.
You've got to have fun while you're doing it. And yes, as you've just seen come up on the screen, those with sharp eyes will look at that and go, hang on, you've done what with that snatch strap? He really wasn't bogged. He just bottomed out. He could almost drive out of it. He really didn't need much in the way of force, and importantly, you would never do a snatch recovery attached to a bull bar like that. You can see there how slow I've accelerated, just enough to put enough tension on it to get him going, and then to help him over this next section where his tyres are stuck in those ruts and he was bottoming out just a little bit with lack of clearance. So don't do that. We did that because we looked at it and assessed that it was safe in those conditions with those vehicles at that time on this day. So yeah, I'm sure I'll still get some comments that we shouldn't have done that, but we did. And we thought it was fine, and on this day it was fine. So from there, it's working our way out through those early muddy sections of this track, which again, there just seemed to me to be a lot more water around than there was on the way in. See, we're all just working our way there through this nice muddy section. So just pulled over here to shuffle the order around. We're coming up to that section where the two long rutted tracks split off left and right, so just in case Mark in his Colorado gets stuck, bottoms out, decided that it was probably better to get him in front of me so that if need be I could be behind him and recover him backwards if that made the most sense off his rear anchor point there. He's just trying to get himself set up here, so I think he was originally going to try and span it maybe, but there's not quite the width on that side of the track to span that one. You pretty much end up in those ruts. Now, I think most of us when we came drove the right hand track, which last time was the left hand track. Pretty much everyone opted for this left hand track because I think they thought there was, you know, less deep ruts there. Not sure. Anyway, decisions. I've decided, you know what, I'm not going to follow the crowd. Go your own way. And having driven this track many times before, I know I've got the clearance to just drive these ruts without contacting the bottom. You can see there somebody's diff's dragged along there pretty nicely. Fortunately for us, short work of it. And yeah, again, look, it was late in the afternoon, didn't drive that bog hole on the way in, so was able to get enough traction to switch over and rejoin the rest of the guys. And from there it's not too far out to the start of the track at all. I think I said in one of the early videos, this is definitely the wettest. There's always mud on this track, but this is definitely the wettest it's been. And when it gets wet like this, it stays wet for a long time because a lot of this section of track down in the valley here doesn't get a lot of direct sun, so it doesn't really dry out for quite some time. never ceases to amaze me, you know, however much mud we drive through. Sam with his MUX running mud tyres, it's still one of the cleanest vehicles out of the group. So again, everybody's gone left. Like, do I follow them and go left? No, I think I'm going to go right. I can't remember which way I came on the way in. Just looked a little more interesting going this way. Would have been really funny if I did get stuck and they said, well, you shouldn't have gone that way, we're leaving you there, no one's coming back to recover you. Certainly would have got wet feet. So this is one of those sections where there's like 3 different tracks to go. I think we all drove this left-hand one on the way in, so we all just elected to sort of follow. And again, this had water sitting in it, but it wasn't, the whole track wasn't wet and muddy like this on the way in, not at all. These sections here again, I don't recall these being quite so muddy. So from there we are almost out. I'm sure I still haven't gotten all of this mud out of the various crevices of the vehicle. So this is nearly right at the start of the track, and we all came in on this bypass track, and we're all going out on the bypass track. A couple of months ago, started driving this track. Sam actually drove, there's a big bog hole up to the left. Sam actually drove that last time, and I have driven it before, but none of us were taking that on today. And again, this was muddy on the way in, but it just looks like it's been churned up, and I don't remember it being quite this lumpy, to be honest. And you can see in the centre there drag marks from people's diffs, so hard to know at this point whether it's guys in our convoy or whether it was the other guys that came in, but somebody's definitely dragged their centre diff along there pretty decently. From there we're out to the open muddy section at the start of the track and back onto the solid track, and almost ready to air up. So keep an eye on that Colorado, because I think he, at this point, he'd had enough of mud and ruts and whatever else. So as soon as he thought he had an opportunity to take a route that was more mud free, he certainly jumped on that. Might be a bit hard to see through the glare of the sun. You can see there just how much water gets dragged up onto the track, and there he goes. It's like, that's not even the B line, I think that's the C or the D line. If that's somebody's tarp over there in the bush, or what the story is. So here we are back to the SEC track, And the original plan was actually to head up the hill there, SEC track out to the bitumen and head home. It was, you can see the sun's kind of low in the sky. It was late afternoon. Turns out that SEC track was actually shut. We're not sure for what reason, but it was shut, so we went back out the way we came in. It wasn't too long though, and we were back looking at Lake Buffalo. Great way to end the trip, great way to end the day. Sun going down almost behind the hills, with the sunlight glinting off the water of the lake. Yeah, this time of afternoon it's always a great drive, and this time was no exception. Enjoying the view there. Just heading back to the Lake Buffalo foreshore area to air up before we get back on the bitumen and head home. So Lake Buffalo is about 15 minutes south of Myrtleford. Popular spot for fishing, boating, sort of activities. Pretty sure there aren't any actual campsites at the foreshore area here. It's a day use area only, but there are designated campsites not too far away if you check your maps. There's amenities block here obviously. There's certainly worse places to pull in at the end of the day and air up, that's for sure. As always guys, thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like the video if you liked it, leave a comment down below. And there we are, bonnet's up, air compressor's hooked up, put the air back in the tyres at the end of the day. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed. The channel's been growing really well. We're actually not far off 1,000 subscribers now. You can see there everybody's got, I think, a different air compressor. And there's the view back to Mount Buffalo. And I will see you in the next video. Just putting the winch in and we're done. Have a great day everyone.